Good evening. If you're just waking up now, it's early morning, and the time here is 3:33 Central. At 2 a.m. roughly local time, Venezuela, Caracas, videos started to emerge on Twitter and other social media websites of the United States beginning an invasion of the land of Venezuela. I say land instead of country because I have a feeling it's soon to be overthrown. This is something that we've been predicting here for the last 2 months, down to the day and the moment that it would end. But we didn't know exactly when it would begin. This is Avidi's Daily News.
Mamá huevo, qué locura. Moscaí. Mira esa mierda, explotaron allá todo.
Well, as you've seen with those videos, the United States has begun its incursion into the nation state of Venezuela. Venezuela has been a socialist governed state for quite a while now. Nicolas Maduro is widely accepted to be a dictator and has been so since the botched election back in the 2016 or 2014, I want to say. We're not going back on that for news right now. We're breaking it. Now, everyone else, including Fox and CNN, are having breaking news headlines about us moving into the nation of Venezuela, when in reality, we've been there for quite a few months now. In case you're not totally sure how this works, the U.S. doesn't just happen to show up on D-Day one day and the war begins. We've started with reconnaissance. We've probably spent the entire year of 2025 doing a full-scale plan of this invasion, run-throughs, workups, and then exercises disguised as something else. Why? Well, Taiwan, primarily, and what Russia is doing in Africa. I know those things seem new to you, but if you go on our website or you want to know more about them, essentially, during the Obama-Biden leadership, we consistently lost ground that we had captured or claimed throughout the history of our country. Now, during the Biden administration specifically, we lost a good portion of ourselves and our other allies. It's not perfect way to say that, but we've basically lost Africa. The Niger Delta region was established quite a while ago during the early invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan as the place that we would be going for our oil. It no longer is. China has used their Silk Road economic plan to take over that side of the globe, and Russia is giving them the military backing. Europe is asking us to come into Ukraine when, in reality, they're utilizing Ukraine for a breadbasket, so they need them. We don't. We also don't need Africa. I'm not saying I don't love Africa, and I think it's one of the most amazing places on earth, and I think the countries there are economically and racially diverse in a way that God created. It's absolutely perfect and beautiful. Now, that being said, the reason we're leaving is not necessarily because we want to, but poor leadership over the last 25 years has led to an economic situation which is no more viable. Taiwan is very important to us, and if it gets invaded, it's basically World War III. How do we avoid that? Well, we need to get rid of the resources and we need to control certain oil reserves that will keep them from ever feeling like they can take that step. And they've spent the last 20 to 30 years figuring out the next 100 years of their strategy. And because we change leadership often, as we do in a republic democracy, which is what we live in, a democratic republic, then we need to be able to keep some sort of consistency on our foreign policy. If another group is able to keep consistency for a 100-year strategy plan, we at least need to plan for something in the event that this leadership is no longer in place, right? Something that is positive for the United States across the board. Well, in the coming days, weeks, and months, you're probably going to be sold on that for Venezuela. But if you went back for the last 2 months, you would have known that we predicted this on November 1st at around 2 in the morning. Not only that, I can tell you right now when it's going to end, before April 1st. Not April Fool's Day, April 1st. The reason I'm saying that is because on October 31st, the FAA ban went into effect from the United States military off the coast of the eastern shore, the southeastern shore of Puerto Rico, to be specific. Why does that matter? That is the direct route for flight or resupply or shipping that we took to get down there and to prepare and practice for this invasion. This is not a country that necessarily doesn't want us there. It's 97% Christian, 98% Latino primarily, and it also is a country that has a disapproval rating of their dictator for the last 10 years for, well, we'll just see. The last time they had an election that we thought the results were relatively true was, I think, 37% approval or lower, and that was still with cookbooks. So what's going to happen? The military has been primarily stripped of its capabilities through loss of resources and selling out a lot of the primary mines and oil reserves to also be part of the stand up for Tren de Agua, but also Cartel of the Sun and other places have taken over the primary resource establishment side of things. So their mines and their oil is basically run by criminals, and it's not very easy to manage and utilize those resources to the maximum capacity in the market that you're in globally if people are primarily using them to just hold and store drugs or people. They're a very big proponent of human trafficking as well. Now, seeing as how we've had a majority of their criminals come through our southern border unabated, incubated, we have since had to respond with a level of ice that most people find unethical or at least downright sinful, I guess you could say. In any event, it was a place that was set up, or a position that was set up intentionally through people who would like to see a weakened America. Not to say the right or the left. I'm not saying there's a side to pick here. We're currently at war, in case you didn't know. We are officially at war with another country. Congress may not have declared it, but we have just invaded what some people consider a sovereign country. However, I would make the argument that we could determine this to have been an invasion of our shores, and we are simply attacking back, as we did with Pearl Harbor. Now, what's going to happen next? Well, a couple things we got to mention. Let's see what we got. No time. They're going to need to define victory. We believe that the victory will be concluded and stated at the State of the Union. We believe Maria Machado is going to be the next leader of Venezuela. She was given the Nobel Peace Prize about 2 weeks after Trump got a signage of the peace between Palestine and Israel. So that was almost an assurity that the rest of the world had agreed that she will be the next leader. Will they be a nation state or will they become a United State? Well, that's to be determined. My guess would be a United State or a sovereign territory like Guam. I don't think it's going to become like Puerto Rico, and I don't think we're going to go in and leave like we did with Cuba. That would be a mistake. What's led up to this? Well, probably one of the best counter-intel operations that's ever occurred, including, I think, Dan Bongino joining the FBI for 1 year to push the absolute and ultimate level of unbelievable ridiculousness over the Epstein files. Essentially, when they showed up, they might have said, you know what? Since we're going to do all this, we might as well go full bore. We're going to need everyone, including our side, to believe us to pull all this off. Once they designated the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, it began. Meaning, I think this has been going on since at least a year or two before President Trump even took office. Indeed, the distribution of the Epstein files and the focus on the same week that we have 2 additional days of a Christmas holiday also means that the military non-essential personnel to this specific action were home. They made absolutely sure of it. They made sure that they were home with their families and were not on base waiting to leak an invasion. Maximum amount of security. It's a perfect plan. Dan Bongino saying that Epstein killed himself months and months ago and utilizing your own backing and group as the way to push your counter intel is ingenious and a massive move. It takes a lot of brass big ones to roll into the president's office, who is a person who very much appreciates his base, and tell him, you're going to betray and confuse your base for the next year to possibly pull off one of the biggest counter intel moves, which will solidify your excellence in year 2. 1 year of sacrifice, of demonization and confusion and loss and things said, and then everything will be made clear and correct after. which is a big ask for a lot of people. But I mean, if they pull it off, they've done one of the biggest things that the United States has ever done since winning World War II. What is that? Expanding our border to basically fend off China and Russia from gaining an economic advantage in Taiwan, which would eventually lead us to either an all out war or some sort of subservience. We want neither of that. We want to be the global leader. So, how do we do that? Well, we had to establish first that that territory is ours and start setting precedent. Gulf of America. That was a push. Counter intel to that push to dissuade people from looking at what we're doing next with Venezuela? Greenland. Greenland and Canada. Trudeau's an idiot, and he is a blowhard. He's just downright terrified of the United States just rolling in and kicking him out of office and possibly trying him for crimes, especially from the COVID trucker timeframe, because those were American citizens that he actually asked the Canadian banks and national or international banks to go after. So I think we'll probably get after that next year. Now, for the crimes against the United States, though, Venezuela was holding one of the primary flags because they also secretly are helped out by Russia and China / not so secretly. I think in the coming days we'll know if Russia and China really had their backing in mind, or if Russia and China have been solidified and focusing only on Ukraine and the continent of Africa. Now, in Africa, China can pretty much do whatever they want. They utilize cobalt mines to keep people enslaved. I mean, the green car that you have that has about the death of 3 kids underneath the age of 18 who died in cobalt mines. It's just massive enslavement. The ability to move and traffic human beings, not just for that, but to sell organs or sex slaves, is going through the continent of Africa like it does in the United States on I-20. It's really bad. And there's a lot of things that the United States doesn't necessarily mention, because if we start bringing out a laundry list of all the things that China is doing, the war with Palestine and Israel doesn't seem very bad, considering what China's been doing with the Uyghur population, or everything that they're doing on the continent of Africa, what's going on in Nigeria. Boko Haram's total group of resume builders in terms of how many Christians they're killing in different countries. But a focus on Nigeria is also important. In fact, so important that the president held off a strike on ISIS or Boko Haram-backed terrorists until the week that we needed to have the absolute maximum amount of focus elsewhere. We had a college football playoff weekend with multiple top 10 matches. I mean, it's the playoff, but also incredible bowl games. So what are we going to do? We're going to limit our military personnel that can leak this or cause issues. Give them 2 more days off. We're going to create a new holiday around the Christmas where most people will take leave if they're not military essential personnel. So we're just ensuring that basically everyone's forced into it. And I would assume there were probably some memos that went out to say, you know what? People deserve this time off. Give your lower enlisted and NCOs the day off. If you need to go in, but do not call them in. I would assume that that was something that was pushed down. Now, additionally, there was focus on other things that would get as much information and cameras away from what we're doing as possible. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, making an announcement of the reestablishment of the purpose of the chaplain of the military, right? So growing the faith base. Well, that's going to be an issue to some people. Not in any way that makes sense, but people just hate morality and God. That's kind of how, man is, seeing as how man has fallen and needed a savior, a Messiah. Hence the name for this beautiful news company. All right, so that's pretty much it today. There is a foretelling factor. We think the Gulf of America was the beginning of the strategy. The timing between this point and Thanksgiving / November 1st, the initial ban on the FAA and the move in with the fleet of an aircraft carrier group and then all the other ships that we had, that ended up being something that was planned because of the week, okay? Lowest amount out of the entire year that there would be cruises or anybody taking vacation down to that specific part of the Caribbean, the southeast corner of Puerto Rico, or cruise ships going around there, going to places like Venezuela. But instead of there, Dominican Republic, pick a place, right? Okay. And you also have the high possibility of a hurricane during hurricane season, which you can basically scoot in a aircraft carrier group behind if your adversary has no space capabilities and very limited aerial capabilities. Venezuela has pretty much nothing in the way of ships or planes. You can go through, it's all Soviet era leftover, purchased from China or Russia, or, some from even, I think they have two German submarines from the 90s or something. Point being, one of those is considered possibly operable. And I would assume before we got there with the carrier group, several nuclear Virginia-class submarines were probably rolling around off the coast of Caracas, making sure everything was taken care of. And I would also assume there were probably some new forms of military use of drones and underwater drones that were utilized to make sure that we were not only not being noticed, but that we were sending as many possible red herrings one way or the other as we could get, because Russia and China would at least try to help out. But they have a lot planned for their backyards. Like we said, China is looking at Taiwan and been thinking about it forever. Here's the problem. If we end up utilizing the oil and the mine resources out of Venezuela, we then gain partners, i.e. Brazil. Colombia might be our next target. I don't know. But there's no reason to overthrow a major player like Brazil or Peru, who can be a partner and a border partner in Brazil, similar to our partners with Mexico and Canada. Mexico is not the primary problem for us having illegal immigrants. While they may come through there, and that may be a place that is a stronghold of cartels and other people, utilizing Mexico has always been a plan for anyone who's an adversary to the United States. Germany sent them letters, so has China and Russia. And they are currently controlled by somebody who it looks like is going to also be ousted from power in the same week that, oh, look at that, Iran is also having issues. Who's to say? But it looks like there might be some simultaneous global conflict in two places that we may have an interest in no longer being underneath the current regime in coming months. How do we establish our legitimacy after such a failed attempt in Iran the first time? Well, first off, that was it Rudolph Roosevelt? Archibald Reindeer? Something... Andy, it was something like super Disney sounding from the 1940s, right? It was a weird name. Rudolph? I'd have to go back and double check. Point being, it was a Roosevelt descendant who was in the State Department who wanted to make a name for himself, came up with the idea of overthrowing and replacing the Shah, and et cetera, et cetera. Now we have Iran. However, we also are moving in over there, and some other things are going on in their neighboring country of Armenia. U.S. just signed a lease right on the border for the next 99 years. Who's to know? Who could say what's going to happen? Not me. I'm just a guy sitting here in a suit. I don't even have any access to that anymore, but I can tell you what I do know, which is how to analyze this stuff. I have to say hats off to the entire Trump administration, and I think there's probably going to be quite a few I'm sorry's, oh my gosh, you were right, I apologize for everything I said about you. I would assume. However, I don't think this is the end of the big plays for this 4-year term of a presidency. And we're also simultaneously seeing that, yes, it is indeed true that there were hundreds of thousands in several states of fraudulently filled out and counted voting ballots. We'll be pushing out a story soon of one that we have personal interaction with and experience in the future. Now, all that being said, victory probably looks like Maria Machado being put in place. Temporarily, the United States will remain there as a diplomatic force. I would assume the people of Venezuela are likely going to vote us in as 51st state or a new territory. The reason being that, instead of anything else, why would we put millions and millions of people through the torture of going from that country to our border only to be denied when we could make them extremely wealthy and very happy where they are? If they're 97% Christian and Latino, if we look at Dade County in Florida, or if we look at El Paso here in Texas, the Latino population has switched. They are very much on the side of no illegal immigration, and they have a moral background, and the morality complex leans very much center, if not much more conservative now. They are heavy on family and family values, a structural family makeup that is traditional. And they also support working hard, getting an education, building your own businesses. Actually, the minorities amongst Latino populations have a much higher rate of entrepreneurial mentality. Why? Because college was never something that they necessarily thought was in the cards for them. So they picked up trades. Here's the thing that the colleges have been lying to people about. You can make more money as a tradeswoman and tradesman. And it becomes your own business that cannot be controlled, meaning you cannot be fired. You own your ability to make money versus somebody else in corporate media or the corporate world. Silicon Valley doesn't tell you what to do. There always need to be plumbers. It's just strange when you stop and think that you just spent 60 or 80 or 100, in some cases, like my alma mater, $275,000 on your child's education when they can't even get a job starting at $75K. Yet 2 years in plumbing school or 1 year in community college with a year of on campus apprenticeship on job, they can end up making $250,000 to $500,000 a year for the rest of their life in a business they own. Where's the real American dream? Well, we think it's probably with the people that are sitting down there in a country who sent us 7.5 million. Well, they had 7.9 leave, but sent us 7.5 million people who would rather move to America as illegals than risk their child's lives, their child's organs, and their own. Well, we're not going to say that on air, but there's a lot of sexual assault that occurs on these women and children that go through that path to get to the United States, and it's horrific. Why would we allow that to continue through a neighbor who apparently is allowing a cartel to run them as well? It's more than likely we'll end up, by the end of the 4th year of Trump's second term, having a much different continental look between North, Central, and South America. And I believe this is the beginning. So, welcome to the new America, everybody. We're not going in to invade and take over a sovereign territory. There is a person who's been utilized by our global adversaries as a puppet, a paper dragon, to allow them to filter in people who are illegal that are specifically seeking to do us harm. Venezuelans, as a group of people, up until the late 90s, were some of the wealthiest and the most future forward or future focusing centric people on the globe. They were the richest by population ethnicity for Latinos globally. They are also extremely conservative, especially since they've just spent 30 years underneath the thumb of, or 25, underneath the thumb of socialism. They hate it. They want it gone. And the only people who don't there have already identified themselves as party members who have basically been turning in their neighbors. They have red lines, and they're ready to get that shit cut out. Pardon my language, but guess what? That means we just gained, 60 million conservatives. Christian Latino conservatives, and a nation that is largely untapped in potential. How do we protect the Amazon rainforest from billionaires or drug cartel owner billionaires of land just bulldozing it and creating, sugarcane factories or cocaine processing plants? We turned it into a United States national park. Congratulations. No more mining in the Amazon. No more deforestation. We protect it. Oh, hey, Colombia, you're talking trash? Give us 1 second. Sit down. We're about to have 60 million new friends. And voting population. Okay. What? You're going to say you don't want Latinos to become equal to that of the white population voting bloc? I'm confused. I thought you wanted diversity of opinion, diversity of race. See, me personally, I love Latinos and people of all races or ethnicities. The primary thing that I look for is, do you have morals and value? Do you care if the family lives? Do you not elevate people from places that wish us death over the U.S. citizens? Do you not give asylum to people from, a nation state where they were pretty much considered the Saddam Hussein family and their country was going to kill them and execute them for crimes against their own civilian population and then take them as asylum in a city called Minneapolis? Yes, that is the family of the congressional representatives of that state. We gave asylum to somebody who not only defrauded our immigration system, but was the evil baddies, and you guys are protecting them like you're protecting victims because you don't actually know anything. You just see somebody who's darker skin color than you and say they must be a victim. That's because you're racist. You don't know things about people in an environment that you didn't grow up. The primary objection to voter ID amongst liberal and leftist voters is that they don't know how to get ID. You're wrong, and you're racist, wildly so. Candace Owens pointed it out, and right now, currently, she's on her own trip to wherever she's going. She's doing her thing. So I'm not going to say anything beyond that. But I will say her push for Brexit has become a very real thing and one of the things that we support here. Black Americans diversify our voting bloc, and they also bring more than just a diversity of skin color and economic background. They have expertise. They're intelligent. They love God. They're hardcore family people. So I don't think diversity for diversity's sake is a big win here. I think people that we are gaining are of a value that we care about. They strongly value the way that we have a capability and a blessing of living here in America. So I'm looking forward to this. I hope the least amount possible of bloodshed, and I hope the Venezuelan people get to try those who have been keeping them underneath a socialist dictatorship for the last 30 years for their crimes. I'm looking forward to new neighbors and the possibility of what we can do to get away from any reliance upon Taiwan. Not that I don't like Taiwan, but because it has become a linchpin that has become a little bit of a blackmail. We don't need that anymore. So I will say Happy New Year to all of you. The eastern side of Christmas, we just want to remind you what the good news is, because we're about to get millions of new family members inside of the American family. Christmas on December 25th is not the only Christmas. The Eastern and Western traditions of celebrating on the 25th and January 5th or 6th, depending on which Orthodox you're at, has been a long-standing tradition. Now, that is the 12 days of Christmas, the separation between the celebration on the left and on the right of the Christian families. In between is just utilized to celebrate and learn about those who have lived underneath this brand new family that we all have, one of Christ, which is why we begin the first day of Christmas with Christ, but the second day of Christmas, the day after the 25th, December 26th, is the Feast of Stephen. You may have heard the song, Good King Wenceslas Looked Down on the Feast of Stephen. This is discussing King Wenceslas, who was not actually king, but was given the title of king and saint after his death because he was the duke of this time. When he was looking down, they even have a road and main causeway named after him in Europe on the rest of his territory. His piety and his charity for the people who were poor and the way that he made himself a servant king is why people discuss this person in alignment with Stephen. Stephen is the first Christian martyr. That is why we have the Feast of Stephen the day after the first Christmas day. First day is for Christ, second one's for the first one who has died and is the first Christian who was martyred for the faith. It's an amazing 12 days. If you go into the background and understanding, your faith is a lot more than you think it does, and it is worth a lot more than I think you put a value on. Right now, we're going to help out a group of people who have spent the last 30 years having their religion stripped from them by socialist and communist dictators from across the nation and across the ocean. We're bringing freedom. And that starts with an endowment from a creator with inalienable rights, the right to free speech, to practice your religion and assemble. So God bless you guys. I hope everyone who's down there is safe. I am hoping there was nothing in the way of advanced weaponry left by China or Russia, and that they're too focused on what's going over in Europe and Taiwan to have spent the time over in Venezuela that would have been necessary the way they did with the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the JFK era. Right now, it's possible that we might be seeing the beginning of the end of China's hold over our economic situation from selling ourselves down the river. So stay tuned, stay prayed up, and remember, it's still the season. While we took time off for Christmas and football and travel and laying and taking afternoon naps after the third or fourth, pound of whatever it is that you're eating that your family makes that you love on Christmas. Spend the time enjoying and spend the time seeking God and what's going to come. There may be very well a new state that you all need to move to and bring your trades, build our real estate, build our vacation homes. Can you imagine going and doing vacation in Caracas? And it's like going to Orlando. But in this environment, it's 97% Latino and staunchly Christian and staunchly against socialism. Bernie Sanders, I don't think you're going to win any more Democratic platform nominations. Not even that they would let you the first time. But AOC and to all the other socialist groupies who think that they actually are up there because they have a brain. You're not. You're a talking piece. And you're useful because the people who are paying for you to be there are also socialists. They're just coming from the other side of the world. Same with a person named Feng Feng in Swalwell or something. I don't know. Who's to say? All right. God bless you. Merry Christmas to all of us, especially since the Armenian Orthodox, and this is an Armenian Christian station, and the Greek Orthodox and all of those after celebrate on this upcoming week. So it is still during the days of Christmas, and I think we all just got a very, very amazing present. Hopefully it doesn't come at the cost of a lot of bloodshed. Their military is pretty much trash and has been sold out and all their resources to cartels. So I'm assuming there's not going to be much resistance since I would guess 83% of the population doesn't even want the current leader. And they've already tried to elect Maria Machado, who's already been given the Nobel Peace Prize for never winning an election and being extradited out of her country when a few weeks ago by us. Meaning we'll probably be delivering our new governor or president or whatever they decide soon. And after that, who's to say? But if I had a Christmas present that was 60 million or 30 million new friends and Christians who are going to be able to utilize all the wealth we have right where they're at and build their society, couldn't ask for more. As long as it's treated fairly and they get the same rights as everyone else, I would say a year's worth of being confused as to why Trump and the administration is acting like this. Dan Bongino, if you sacrificed a year of your life just to play the role that nobody's going to believe that he would sell out, and then everybody spending a year trashing you, and it turns out that this was all part of the play to culminate in this moment where everything is utilized to distract the world from what's going on and make this as bloodless as possible, I would say that's a sacrifice well paid, sir, if that's what occurred. So if not, who knows? I don't know what else is going on around there. But I will say it is strange that they're, you know what? We're going to save that. So until we see you guys next time, as we said, please feel free to go back. We just haven't been reporting in the last month because we've been busy, and we were definitely right. So it's not like I was going to keep coming and telling you guys what's going on and endangering what's happening, right? Like when you nail it to a certain point, you got to be like, we should really shut up for mission critical safety and just talk about other stuff. But it was literally just sports and that, so there wasn't much else to talk about. So hats off to all of those who from week one have been pushing things like, we're going to take over Greenland and Canada. All right, fly the jets down. Oh, you guys want an extra day off before? You know what? 2 days extra off around Christmas. Make sure nobody's on base. Hey, let's just have a 16-team playoff or whatever it is this time. I don't know if that was part of it, but could you imagine if the playoff committee expanded it because Trump said, hey, we're invading somewhere. Well, he wouldn't say that, but we're going to be doing something around that time. You guys will be expanding the playoff. I know that's not how it went down, but it's funny to think about it. It's not even really possible. But anyway, all right. That's all we got. So I guess we're going to do the snap goodbye because I think we settled on that being the only way that I can classily sign out. But we'll be in touch. Stay up on 80 News.